What other positions do you think might be more pressing in round two, given, we kind of know what the strengths of this draft are?
Sure. Let's say they don't sign a big money D tackle, right? Is Mason Smith from LSU. He's a guy that I talked to at the Combine and liked. Highly recruited, right? Might have been one of the top guys coming out of his recruiting class. Had some issues at LSU, but a big dude, likable, had some success at LSU, coming off an injury. I think he played well coming off of that. Chris Jenkins from Michigan, his dad played in the league. Like, there's going to be some guys at 54 that are intriguing. And you have Tomlinson. You have Ika, who you took in the third round, right? Maybe you re-sign Mo Hurst and or Shelby Harris. So, I think you could patch it together without that big money guy if you take a guy at 54 and think this guy's got a bunch of upside. In the end, I keep coming back to the same positions because the Browns are pretty set. I think they need a running back at some point, whether it's free agency or the draft. We talked about they need a number 2 tight end. I would be, if they went and said, hey, we think that tight end at 54 is a really good alternative. We can kind of consider him a receiver, but he can be the number 2 to Njoku. I could buy into that, right? But to me, it's about the front. It's about the D-line and receiver. Those are still the spots that draw my attention the most.
It's kind of interesting. So we've talked a little bit about Ika, a little bit about Tillman. Those are both third-round picks. On good teams, playoff teams, third-round picks have a tough time getting onto the field. So I know Browns fans are kind of used to, well, we picked this guy in the third round. Why haven't we seen him? What's wrong with him? He's playing in front of us. In the instance of Siaki Ika, now he got to play later in the year and it wasn't as good as you would have liked, but he was playing behind Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, who were having pretty good years. So I guess what I'm saying, we don't know what Siaki Ika is going to be this year.
You don't, and I think you have to remember that when we talk about all these free agent moves. Now, it doesn't mean they're not interested in the tackle, because I fully think that they were interested in Christian Wilkins. But if they reset and say, hey, we have Dalvin Tomlinson we paid a lot of money for. They invested in Ika with a third-round pick. I can see how the Browns would look at it and go, it's not as drastic a need as maybe I think it is, right? And, the receiver is the same to some degree. I mean, they just went and got Jeudy, so we know that they needed to address it. But they probably like Tillman better than people on the outside, right? I'm sure they like Bell better than people on the outside. So I do think you have to factor that in. But your point's well taken. I mean, Ika was behind Tomlinson, Elliott, Hurst, and Harris, right? He didn't get on the field until one of those guys got hurt, until Maurice Hurst got hurt. It was the first time Ika got on the field. And, part of that is he probably wasn't ready, and part of that is there are a bunch of good guys in front of him.
Yeah, and you know what? The front office and the coaching staff have gotten very patient, much to the chagrin of the fan base sometimes. I mean, Scott, you and I have been covering the team for – there were times where 2 years in, third-round picks were like, oh, it's time to move on. They let them – they try to develop them and exhaust that now.
Yeah, and I think that's a good trait to have, the patience. Now, part of it might be stubbornness, right? They drafted a guy and they're not going to let him go. And we saw that, even with the lower round picks, right? This guy's going to make the roster because he's a draft pick. Now, that's changed, but for a while, that's how Andrew Berry was. He just didn't cut his draft picks. But I appreciate that patience. But it wears out at some point, right? We saw with Anthony Schwartz. The Browns gave him as many chances as they could, then they were done. And, Tillman's not even close to there. I thought Tillman showed some positive things last year. David Bell showed a couple things, but he just isn't special in any one area, right? So you have to balance that. You have to give these guys a chance to develop, mature, and all that. And then you have to say, can this guy help me now and in the future? And if he can't, then it's time to move on.